Geographers have spent time understanding how states forge supranational organizations and have proposed different theories concerning the development of the state and the nature of political power. In this lecture, we will examine supranational organizations and global geopolitics. These topics are important to geographers because of the ways nations and states have defined and modified boundaries and have used them to their benefit. Supranational organizations help spread internationalism, which is the development of close political and economic relations among states. A supranational organization consists of multiple states that agree to work together for a common economic, military, cultural, or political purpose, or a combination of several of these factors. Most of the supranational organizations that exist today were created after World War II. The United Nations is one of such organizations with a primary purpose of promoting global peace and security. The United Nations was founded in 1945 with the mission of building and sustaining cooperative relations among states, and when conflicts arises, using diplomacy to negotiate peaceful solutions. The photo on the left depicts UN peacekeepers at work. Notice the blue helmets they wear to distinguish who they are. These two workers are patrolling the Israeli-Lebanon border to maintain security in this region. Other peacekeepers monitor elections or provide humanitarian assistance. The UN does not have an army. Rather, UN members contribute their own military personnel for peacekeeping operations. The real power for the day-to-day maintenance of international peace and security lies within the Security Council. The chart on the right shows the composition of the Security Council. Seats are allocated according to the regional groups shown. The other in the Western European group includes Australia and New Zealand. Another supranational organization to note is the European Union. Unlike the United Nations, the European Union is regional in scale and was created in order to enhance economic cooperation in Western Europe. 5 important developments contributed to the establishment of the EU. 1. It began basically in three countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, in 1944. This trio was called Benelux, who realized that together they could lower cost of productions if they cooperated with one another to remove tariffs and ease restrictions of trade. These 3 countries are small and around the same location in Europe, sandwiched between Germany and France. 2. Implementation of the Marshall Plan after World War II stimulated rebuilding of Europe and encouraged regional cooperation. 3. Establishment of the separate European coal and steel community in 1952 to help move coal and steel. The Benelux, France, Western Germany, and Italy all became members of this community. 4. Acceptance of the Treaty of Rome in 1957, which then created the European Economic Community, or EEC. The goal was to increase economic cooperation through this treaty with a single or common market. And 5. Implementation of the Treaty of Brussels in 1967. This treaty amended the previous treaty to include political cooperation and rename the EEC to the European Community, or EC. In 1992, the name European Union came to be with 12 members. Since 1993, 15 other members joined for a total of 27, as shown in the map on the left. One of the missions of the EU was to introduce and use a common monetary system that would be used in all member countries, called the Eurodollar. The Eurodollar, created in 1999, was brought by both promise and problems for this region. 11 countries at the time joined together and created the European Monetary Union, or EMU for short, to integrate individual states' monetary systems to a common currency. Now, 18 countries have completely replaced traditional national currencies, creating what is commonly called the Eurozone. In theory, all remaining EU members are obliged to join the Eurozone at some point in the future. However, some EU countries have considerable reservations about giving up control over their national monetary system and therefore continue to use their traditional currency. Some of the major problems for the Eurozone involves bailouts and fiscal austerity. Many countries with weak economies have overspent, creating huge indebtedness because they were able to get cheap credit under the EMU member status. Also, before the EMU, it was common for governments to manage debts by adjusting their currency by inflation or deflation. However, this is no longer allowed under the EMU. Instead, they must seek help from more solvent EMU countries, which means receiving bailouts funded by Germany, France, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. Furthermore, the countries who sought bailouts had to adopt a policy of fiscal austerity, resulting in massive reductions of government spending. However, this has led to stagnant economies and still higher unemployment in the affected countries. The map on the right shows the EU members and the Eurozone. Geopolitics is the study of the relations among geography, states, and world power, which has its roots in the work of German scholar Friedrich Ritzel. Ratzel, who was a zoologist who was interested in geopolitical geography in 1877, developed his theory of the organic state. In his theory, he stated that, like organism, the growth of a state needed sustenance in the form of resources and room to grow. He continually compared the natural environment with political state in that he also placed an importance on competition. A state would need to compete with one another for resources and space, just like animals would do. Unfortunately, Nazi Germany used this theory to support their goal of strengthening and enlarging the German state. Another theorist, Halford Mackinder, a British geographer, created the Heartland theory. He linked geopolitical stability with the maintenance of a balance of power among states. Thusly, if the power of states changed, so would the dominant world power. His theory basically stated that whoever had control and power of the large Eurasian landmass, later referred to as the Heartland, would dominate the world power. According to Mackinder, the Heartland shown here possessed the best combination of strategic geographic factors for world domination: an icy, inaccessible northern coast, desert and mountain barriers, and a European frontier that could be closed by land power made the Heartland citadel-like. In Mackinder's view, whoever dominated the Heartland would be able to defeat any sea power. After World War II, relations between the United States and the Soviet Union cooled significantly. The term Cold War describes the hostility and rivalry that existed between the United States and the Soviet Union during the mid-1940s to the late 1980s. These two factions created a bipolar world between East and West. During this time, the United States was fearful that if one country became communism, then others would follow suit, which is called the domino theory. This philosophy was used to justify the American policy of containment, meaning the effort to limit the spread or influence of a hostile power or an ideology. The domino theory was one of the reasons the U.S. got involved in the Vietnam War, to prevent or contain the spread of communism that was occurring especially in North Vietnam. The map shows the East-West alignments during the Cold War period. A contemporary theory of the world is that of Samuel Huntington. He argues that instead of two opposing groups, there is a global configuration that is multipolar and consists of several groups of civilizations, which are shaped more by factors affecting cultural identity. His civilizations, which are shown in the map, are, however, very broad categories that may give a false impression of unity when there is none or only a weakly developed one. Critics ask, for example, can we really speak of a single Africa or Islamic civilization today? Furthermore, future conflicts between these civilizations will clash along fault lines where the two meet. A second school of thought sees a very different world order in which globalization enables deterritorialization, or a loosening up between people and place. This will occur with greater human mobility and technological integration. For example, members of a nation may be extremely geographically dispersed, but can maintain close ties, even virtual communities, through the use of technology. In other words, a community's identity may be sustained in spite of its detachment from a specific territory. This is a very interesting thought in that we may see boundaries dissolve completely with globalization. Terrorism is a threat or use of violence in order to instill fear, gain influence, and/or advance a specific cause or conviction. Terrorism is not new. These graphs show trends in terrorism over time. The graph on the right shows the number of terrorist incidents by region. Terrorist activity related to the status of Northern Ireland, the Basque Country, and the French island of Corsica in the Mediterranean Sea help explain the spike in Western Europe in the 1970s. The graph on the left shows the attacks in Afghanistan and Iraq. The Taliban has been responsible for most of the terrorist attacks in Afghanistan, whereas Al-Qaeda and affiliated groups are leading perpetrators of terrorism in Iraq. Attacks in Iraq often target government facilities, police, and civilians. In Afghanistan, they target the troops and military facilities. Please pause the video and answer the following. Do you believe terrorism would decline if state boundaries were to dissolve? Defend your position using one of the theories in geopolitics. In your own words, using the text as a guide, be thorough and specific in your answer.